We're back. Season premiere. I'm gonna say I'm a bit apprehensive about this new season. Going into the first episode, where it's kind of in the present, but they kind of take a step back. Going back about 3 months into the past, scenes that we've seen, that we think we've seen, but now providing more context to them, like more backstory. So scenes that we haven't been privy to. Some of these things are things that have already happened in the past or I've seen in other shows, and it's like, I don't know that I'm optimistic about where things are going or how they might choose to handle the show going forward. Number one, I think the whole thing of killing Unique and then bringing him back, I absolutely hated. To be clear, I love the character Unique, and I was actually disappointed to see him go. I thought like he was a really interesting character, and I would argue probably the best dressed character, because I do think that he dresses better than RAQ. But, you know, when you start killing off and bringing back characters, I get it. You know, the issue with that was that, you know, Joey Badass has like this other career with music and whatnot. And so, you know, some back and forth about that, about him wanting to leave the show and then deciding to come back. I think it was a terrible idea. You find a more realistic way to give him a break from the show, you know, or to have him leave the show, but leave, you know, like a loophole and open it for him to come back. This whole thing of killing people off and then having them come back, I just think is stupid. If not have him go to jail so it doesn't feel repetitive because it's already happened, that it should have been something like, oh, you know, have him and Ronnie get into it, but have some other kind of way, like not that, oh, it seems like he's died. Maybe somehow somebody intervenes at the last minute and he ends up in the hospital, where let's say, oh, you know, it's touch and go for a while. You know, where like he's laid up in the hospital, even like, okay, fine. It's like another soap opera thing. Like, you know, put him in a coma. And it's like, you know, we don't really know how this is going to go. Like, it's looking kind of touch and go. He could die. He might get better. We can't really tell. And then like, just don't show him. You know, and it's like have people forget about it. Something that happens in real life. Right? But like this whole thing of, oh, he's dead. And, you know, Ronnie kicked him down the side of the hill and I just think it's cheesy. I think it's stupid. Especially because now that he's back, okay, fine, they took him to the vet. It helps to explain why it is that no one knows that he was relatively okay, or at least alive. You know, with the vet thing. Fair enough. But then it's like this whole repetitive thing, this kind of overselling of, oh, you know, well, when he wakes up, like he's had traumatic brain injury, but, you know, when he gets up, he might not be the same Unique. You know, he might be very aggressive and and expect a personality change. And it's just like, I can see where this is going and I feel like I'm going to end up being disappointed. Like, it just seems like it's going to turn into nonsense. It's like some of the storylines already with what's taking place feels repetitive. It's like this hasn't happened with him before, but I've seen it in other shows and I don't have high hopes. Now, on a whole, and I think like his whole appearance with like his forehead and his eye being all messed up, I'm just like, please. I'm not here for it. Secondly, Marvin, here we go. Like, didn't we see this before? This thing of him having dealings on the side. What's the guy's name? Marchetti? Tony Danza's character? Fishman. You know, Marvin receives a phone call and it's, you know, not exactly cloak and dagger, but, you know, it's somebody that has dealings with RAQ, you know, calling him. He pops up, we realize that it's Fishman. What is it? His son-in-law is stepping out on his daughter in a very public way, embarrassing, so he wants something to be done about it. And it's like, now, sir, this is what brought you guys together. You going outside of RAQ, having your own side dealings with these mob people where you see they're just a bunch of problems, where actually Marvin himself could have found himself in danger and going to rough up this guy. He's interrupted by these other two yokels showing up. You know, I was wondering for a moment, like, is he going to try to just, like, shoot all three of them? You know, are they going to beat him up? What's going to happen here? And it's like, that as well just seems like nonsense. Because why get involved? Let them figure out their own business. But at the same time, something that stood out to me was Marvin's statement to Fishman, like, oh, basically RAQ isn't the boss of me. Like, I make my own decisions, I'm my own person. It's like, okay, sure. But in the past, when you've done these kinds of things, it usually doesn't go very well. RAQ, carrying on with Unique and whatnot, we see that she's pregnant. This guy that you don't take seriously, that you don't see any future with, how does that even begin to come about? It's like, not to be judgmental, but it's like, I'm disappointed in RAQ. Like, you're supposed to be smarter than this girl. Here you are, now suddenly, you're in such a hustle to go get revenge on Ronnie, which okay, because he deserves that. But then it's like, oh, I gotta let Pernessa, whatever his son's name is, let Pernessa and his son know that he's alive. And it's like, sir, when you were out here carrying on with RAQ, you didn't care about none of that at all. So, please, okay? Get out of here. Just a bunch of nonsense. It's like a reimagining of things. Then you think about it with like RAQ. It's like, okay, RAQ is pregnant. That's not that far-fetched. It's ridiculous on her part, like irresponsible on her part. I mean, Unique as well, but theoretically, like, he would have been dead, right? RAQ goes to get an abortion, which, no judgment on that. That's not the issue. And then when she's in for, like, the consultation and whatnot, and, they're asking her questions, we come to find out that, like, she was pregnant with Kanan, and she had Kanan, but that she also had, like, sounds like a backroom abortion as well previously. So this is now, like, her second abortion. Given your lifestyle, you are really not in the position to be raising a kid. Like, with all of these people shooting at you and all this kind of stuff, how would you manage being pregnant at the same time? It's like, you have your hands full, you're struggling already to raise Kanan, and it's like, look how Kanan is turning out. What are you gonna do with another kid? It's just, I feel like the storylines are just becoming very far-fetched. Like, the Unique storyline is just tainting everything else for me. Because I just feel like, I don't buy that RAQ would be pregnant with Unique's baby. I just don't. I don't know. It just feels like they're kind of so all over the place with the characters. Like, there's a lack of consistency in how they move and handle things. RAQ and Jukebox have a conversation. She relies on Jukebox to pick her up from the doctor's appointment. And Jukebox is the only person that she tells, about her abortion. And then not just that, but that Unique was the father. And they have, like, a conversation. It's like, this is, since, like, the loss of the boyfriend from the first season, it's like, Jukebox is, like, the only person that RAQ fully opens up to. Right? It's like, because of the loss of that romantic relationship from the first season, it's like you kind of see this very kind of flat perspective, or this less dynamic version of RAQ, right? It's not as multi-dimensional as she was in the first season, right? You still see her reaching out to Kanan, and I actually thought it was an interesting scene and kind of sweet in its own way, where she lets Kanan know that he might hate her. He might thoroughly dislike her. He might have nothing but negative thoughts towards her, but that she loves him and there's nothing he can do about it. That she loves him and she's going to continue loving him, and tough noogies for him. And in its own way, I actually thought it was kind of sweet. It's like a degree of vulnerability that you really only see with Kanan. And it's like that itself as well. I'm interested in seeing where that goes. As always, I'm pulling for Jukebox. She sits down with Nicole's dad and discusses his time in the military, and she's kind of at a crossroads as far as where she's going to go from here. And I'm interested to see how it was that with this family of, for lack of a better term, criminals, how she ended up becoming a police officer. Never mind that she was kind of corrupt. It's going to be interesting. So there's some storylines I'm not at all here for, but others that I'm still interested in, and we'll see how things go over the course. At the end of the episode, where, she goes back in because they have her come in for like the actual abortion, and she has to go back in. They talk about her feelings and whatnot, or that's the plan for the appointment. But basically, she kind of just brushes I'm guessing the nurse or the case manager, whoever it is, like brushes off her concerns. Like, she's not going to waste her time looking back at what could have been or how she wanted things to work out or whatnot. Instead, her thing is to just pretty much continue pushing forward, to continue moving on. Like she states, it's not that she doesn't have feelings. She has feelings just like everyone else, and she goes through her own things. Like we see here, like, she's got a bunch of stuff going on in her life that she doesn't share with everyone else. In a sense, you can also see it in her mom as well, right? This thing of, I'm aware that I've done wrong. I don't necessarily want to be blamed for them. In her mom's case, RAQ seems to be more willing to accept blame and accept accountability. But at the same time, there's like this unwillingness to sit down and interrogate those things and figure out, well, how can I do better in the future? Or how can I fix and improve this in the future? Kanan, he's like a little bit less annoying right now. But the interesting thing with him is he has like this school assignment. I was surprised that he was even still going to school. The upside to this is that, this assignment that he has to do requires him to go and sit down with his grandmother, who surprisingly is quite civil. This is like the most normal and non-irritating this woman has been since like first meeting her on the show. Like she's just been, maybe she's like fine with Jukebox and Kanan, but it's like with her kids, she is so hostile towards them and just incredibly problematic. I've always been curious to get like more of her backstory, because I know it would then offer more backstory into the Thomas siblings themselves as individuals, their upbringing, and then also, their parents. Like, how did they exactly wind up in this situation? He speaks to Marvin, he spoke to Lou. You get the sense that there's like so much anger within both of them towards their father. And, they explain that, it's like the disappointment in how he left them. But then it's like you get to RAQ, and RAQ is seemingly like, she doesn't go into details because Kanan doesn't ask her anything about the dad. But up to this point, RAQ has really been the only one to speak like very glowingly about her father. And it's like you hear the pride and the joy that she takes in stating to Kanan that like, well, why don't you ask me anything? Because like I was his favorite kid. And, I'm hoping that they continue on with that thread. That's like the one storyline that I actually am looking forward to, like learning more about the dad. And then it's like, later on when Kanan goes and sits down with his grandmother, because I was like, why would she be calling Kanan? Kanan doesn't even drive. And it turns out that she has this secret that she has cancer, which I'm sure is going to end up being that like, oh, she's dying or whatever it is. But she's made the choice not to tell her kids. But I am hoping that they continue down this rabbit hole. Is something I've been interested in from the first season, that they not only delve into Grandpa Elijah, is what we're calling him, Elijah Thomas, but also the mom, the Thomas siblings' mom, to get a better understanding of her as well. Like if you notice, like there were a bunch of pill bottles on the little side table when Kanan first walked into her house. And I was thinking like, oh man, here goes Granny again on the drugs. And then it turns out that, she's dealing with cancer and whatnot. So it's probably a result of that. But it's like, I'm hoping that they delve more into their family dynamic and how it is that they ended up being the people that they are. Now, as far as if I'm going to keep doing these reviews, I'm not quite sure as yet. We'll see. But definitely if I do, they're probably just going to be shorter reviews, not as in-depth as they were before.